Hello and thanks for staying with us. This is Focus Nigeria. My name is Amechi Anapwe. Nigeria on Wednesday marked 65 years since it gained independence from British colonial rule. While the nation reflects on its past, many eyes are looking towards the future, and that future lies in the hands of young people that constitute the bulk of the nation's population. We will continue with our special independence feature. We will explore how young Nigerians are shaping the country's destiny through innovations, political activism, culture, and entrepreneurship. At 65, Nigeria remains a nation of promise, but also one of paradox. Over 60% of its population, we told earlier, under the age of 30, and why challenges like unemployment, insecurity, and inflation loom large, the youth are refusing to be silent, from creating apps that solve local problems to leading peaceful movements like EndSARS. Youths are writing their own narrative, one that demands accountability, transparency, and opportunity. Even not too young to run law was enunciated via amendment of the Constitution, all championed by young people. Now, education remains a critical background and battleground with recurring ASU strikes and underfunded schools. Many young Nigerians have turned to alternative learning. Online courses, skill acquisition, and mentorship networks have become the order of the day. And as Nigeria turned 65 recently, the question remains, will its leaders listen to the heartbeats of its young people, or will the generation that holds the future continue to be silenced? One thing is clear, whether through tech, activism, or agriculture, young Nigerians are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they should be the voices of today. Are they ready to embrace this situation? Have they been taking this responsibility? We shall examine all this as Nigeria turned 65 recently, and we'll be getting the perspective of young people on the future of the country. Do stay with us.
Pleased to report that we have finally turned the corner. The worst is over, I say. Yesterday's pains are giving way to relief. I salute your endurance, support, and understanding. I will continue to work for you and justify the confidence you repose in me to steer the ship of our nation to a safer harbor. Under our leadership, our economy is recovering fast, and the reforms we started over 2 years ago are delivering tangible results. The second quarter 2025 gross domestic product grew by 4.23%. That's Nigeria's fastest pace in 4 years, and outpaced the 3.4% projected by the International Monetary Fund. Inflation declined to 20.12% in August 2025, the lowest level in 3 years. The administration is working diligently to boost agricultural production and ensure food security to reducing food costs. In the last 2 years of our administration, we've achieved 12 remarkable economic milestones as a result of the implementation of our sound fiscal and monetary policies. We have attained a record-breaking increase in non-oil revenue, achieving 2025 target by August with over 20 trillion naira. In September 2025 alone, we raised 3.65 trillion. That is 411% higher than the amount raised in May year 2023.
In just 1 year of this administration, 15 million Nigerians were pushed into acute poverty. Today, more than 150 million Nigerians lack access to basic health, education, water, and sanitation. The number is growing daily under the APC government that pursues brutal revenue-driven policies while ignoring the people's welfare. We should learn from nations like China, India, Indonesia, and Bangladesh, which have turned around their economies through disciplined leadership and people-oriented policies. Nigeria too can rebound, but only if we exit the path of incompetence and fiscal irresponsibility. They should instead fuel our determination to rebuild. Nigeria has the resources, talent, resilience to become an industrialized nation in record time.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's get off our discuss first. Let's bring in Cynthia Mbamalo, Director of Program Siaga Africa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.
Of course, Nigeria's trajectory, economic, political, and social development is one that appears to have left young people out. But let's start with this way. Let's start this way. Is it the country? Does Nigeria meet your expectations?
You know, we're still in the independence mood, and I think the whole of October would be reflecting on Nigeria's journey. I would say Nigeria has not met my expectations, and is one, I think for me, it's like a cocktail of experiences where some of them have left sweet, some bitter, some sour taste in not just my tongue, in our tongue. So for every Nigerian, there are several experiences that they have had in this 65 years of our existence. And I do believe that at 65, this is the time for us to start reimagining what the Nigerian dream is. And this is time for our political class to actually sit down and recommit to Nigeria, because I think the bigger challenge we've had is the failure of our political class and political leadership. And this is a time for Nigerians to wake up. At 65, we can no longer tolerate certain things or make excuses for certain things. You know, 65 is age of maturity for any nation, because, you know, there's age of human life and there's the age of a nation. 65, we can no longer be making excuses. It's time to look at all our experiences and let those experiences guide the way we move forward.
Are they ready to embrace?
That's my challenge.
You know, you wait to turn a corner. Have we turned that corner? Have they realized that this is the time to pull the brakes and take that turn?
Well, I'm hoping they would come to that realization, because if we look at the trends of protests happening within the continent, if you follow Madagascar, follow Morocco, follow Nepal, and Nepal is, outside the continent, but Kenya has been ongoing. It's a growing generation of Gen Zs who are frustrated with their system failing them, and they are taken to the streets. And the other day I was having a conversation with someone. They said, oh, the Arab Spring may have been a youth movement, but how did the nation survive post the Arab Springs? And there is value in our political class to realize that the generation of young people we have now, they're not the generation that sit and wait for things to happen. They're not the generations that make excuses for you. They're the generation that after they are tired and frustrated, they take action, whatever way they want to take that. So I'm hoping they would realize that this trend we're seeing is not so far away from us. And so they will take that seriously. You know, listening to the president, when the president gave his Independence Day speech, I was looking for a lot more honesty in it. I'm not saying that it was filled with dishonesty. There were some positives there. But I felt like the comparisons that were drawn were not comparisons that we should be drawing. For instance, making comparisons with things like in 1960, this is the number of schools we had. In 1960, this is what we had. We are not expected to be where we were in 1960, or they're not really. What we're making, the comparisons we should be drawing is nations that attained independence around the period we attained independence. How are they performing?
There were nations that were better off in the 60s, Southeast Asian nations that are now left off behind,
Yes, so those
and
are the
competing with the world
those are the
powers.
comparisons we should be drawing, not comparisons of how many schools we had in 1960. We're not expecting to be making that comparison. How many people were enrolled in schools then? You know, I'm using that as one of the examples. And I think the realization should be, as a nation, who are those that we are running the race together with? Where are they? If they've left us behind, why are we still behind? How can we catch up? You know, you cannot constantly be comfortable in where you are and say, I'm doing well, and then you relax and become, you know, very docile and you're not doing much. And I think that is the realization we're
And that
hoping to achieve.
realization you talked about is for the elite, those at the helm of affairs, to realize that things are not the way it should be.
Exactly.
First, that realization has to come in.
Yes.
And that commitment to change things for the better. So two things now are lacking. The realization that things are so bad and needs radical changes, and the commitment to us doing them.
Yes, and you put it rightly, the realization and the commitment, because it's one thing to realize that we are not getting to where we want to be. It's another thing to commit to actually change the growth pattern. And I think that growth pattern is where we need to get to. You know, what are the things that we want to see for the Nigeria that we all hope for and dream for? I think one, what is the Nigerian dream? Most times we talk about Nigerian dream. I think for the average Nigerian out there, for the young person out there, if you ask them what's a Nigerian, and Nigerian dream may be to Japa. You see a lot of young people, what they are working.
Loss of faith in the country.
Yes, because they've lost, for them, their dream is to get out rather than to stay back and build.
Pursue other countries'
dreams, you know. And I think that is where it begins. The elites shape the identity and the ideologies, right? Because that's why you are in the leadership position. And I think that is, I do believe that where we need to be at this moment is let's define the Nigerian dream. A lot of Nigerians just want a system that works for them. If the system works, then they connect to the system. But the system is not working.
You have just described the Nigerian dream.
Yes, a system that works. A
country of equity, justice,
welfare. Welfare. The Constitution is clear. It talks about freedom, equality, and justice. So what is freedom? I think for me and for every Nigerian out there, freedom is the ability to wake up. I know that I'm certain of where my next meal will come from. Freedom is the ability as a parent to be able to send my child to school, and I'm confident that I can afford to cater for my child or my children's need. Freedom for a young person is that ability to have my skills, utilize my skills to make ends meet for myself. Freedom for the women is that I can be free to participate in government. I will be represented. I will have my voice heard. Freedom for the person with disabilities, that the system is accessible for them. They can move, they can interact, they can represent, they can find employment. So I do believe that when we think about the Constitution, when it talks about freedom, freedom is not abstract. Freedom is how we interact with the society and the system, and how the system meets our needs. Justice is simple. This whole level of inequality, social inequality can no longer persist. And justice is that the system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage. If people feel that they are held to be accountable, that they are punished for that. And I think equality is broad for me. Equality is that every man and every woman has opportunity, equal opportunity to, you know, fulfill his or her potentials in our society. When I talked about accountability, I was just reflecting a while back when General Babangida, former president, released this book, and I felt a lot of disappointment at how there was a lot of celebration and less questions and no demand for accountability. And the question is, what are we telling younger people? Are we telling the youth, the younger generation, that you can lead for a period of time, you can abuse power, you can take over the system without constitutionality, and after that, years later, you can write a book and be celebrated. So are we saying that when people fail in office, we don't have a system to hold them accountable?
That's where I wanted us to go for that deeper into accountability. Because a lot of people say, Nigerians are docile and all that. The meaning is that they fail or refuse to hold leaders accountable. And you were quite right. Once you hold leaders to account, it shows that, it brings that restraint. And they understand that there are people watching their back, insisting that the right things be done. So that culture appears to be absent in Nigeria.
Yes, and that is the culture of impunity that has remained with us for a long period of time. So when you say 65 years, what has our expectations been met? The simple thing is, our expectations would have been met if every leader that held office from 1960 till date, for each time they held office, there was a measure of accountability for every resource that was budgeted for at the time they were in office. These monies and budgets were allocated and used and implemented properly. If we had every government implement what the plans are, use our budget judiciously, what we would have had is just government of continuity with subsequent government. But what we've had for a long period of time is you hold office for a period of time, you leave office, we're poorer than we were, we're in huge debt, the system is still the same, poverty is on the increase, and no one is asking you questions. And then once they leave office, they're always writing books. Then you write a book, and then you want people to celebrate you, and then people come and actually celebrate you. So it's like there is no system of accountability.
So what steps do we take to enthrone that culture? Because it should be young people are the lead, those with the dynamism and energy.
Yes, and that's the call to the millennials and the Gen Zs, and even the Generation Alpha coming after. We can no longer celebrate bad behavior. The reason we make reference to countries in Asia, you know, when we talk about Singapore, for instance, they had their independence around the period we had our independence. The reason Malaysia and the others is because they have institutionalized a system of accountability where even though there is corruption, there are measures to check.
Even former presidents are being committed to prison.
Here
and
they are sentenced.
About they are being celebrated.
Here they are celebrated. Someone that literally truncated our journey to democracy comes out, releases a book, and we all celebrate. And even young people are made to think that he is a hero of Nigeria. And I think that is the kind of attitudinal change we need as young people. Even when our political elite begin to celebrate these people, we use the platforms that we have accessible to us to call them out and say, no.
The platforms that young people dominate.
Which is the social media platforms. The cyberspace. And that is the present and the future. You know, what we are not understanding is that things are changing. There's a shift in the trend. With even the emergence of artificial intelligence and young people leading this space, the face and the culture of politics and the face of politics will be changing subsequently, because with the tools the youth have at their disposal, they can use it to make and call for accountability. I always make reference to Kenya, and that is because young people leverage technology in leading this consistent Gen Z movement that they've had from 2024. And I've spoken with
That's the key strategy.
Yes, the key strategy, leveraging. In fact, I was speaking to one of the Gen Zs in Kenya. I said, how do you... And they said that they leverage AI to even tell their peers where the police would be and where they wouldn't be, what route to go, which is why it was difficult to stop them. Because if today you think they are convening in point A, they've already identified you're deploying to point A and they're in point B. And that helped them remain consistent. And so they're also leveraging that to mobilize resources because most of them are charged to court and they go to court, defend themselves, and they come out. And I see the value in that. The organizing began online before they had the virtual, the offline protest. And so that is the opportunities that young people have. Leverage your technological tools to hold people accountable. And then during the elections, one thing I loved about the Gen Zs in Kenya was because they're also talking about they are getting ready for the elections. And I think Nigerian youth...
That should be the ultimate.
That is the ultimate.
Expressing that anger
because
during
the
election.
question was you can't just protest and then you will not vote. And so for some of them, you speak with it, say, yes, oh no, we know we are getting ready for 2027 because the general election also is 2027.
Will it be before or after
it's most likely going to be after ours because ours is in
Nigeria's and Kenya election bear some semblances.
Semblances and similarities. The only difference is they have better turnout than we do. And I'm hoping... See, now...
And it speaks of the governance processes and participation of youth in their processes.
Yes, and actually the government listens to them. Even though, I mean, for a Nigerian looking at that, I'm like, oh, but your government, I mean, their president had to, at one point, host a virtual meeting with all of them because he said, I want to talk with your leaders. They said, we don't have leaders. And then there was a virtual, and I said, see, that is responsiveness. That is what our leaders need to do. You need to create a platform to listen and talk to Nigerian youth, a platform to engage the people, not just the youth, because we still have the older generation whose dreams have they've almost lost their hope and dreams in Nigeria because some of them have lived as they were alive and active or aware during the military dictatorship, and the promise of democracy was that with democracy things would change, and now they're in a democracy and they're asking themselves, were we better off in the military or in a democracy?
Now, you spoke of the Kenyan young people saying we don't have leaders. And I remember during the NSAS, they kept repeating we don't have leaders. Why are they afraid of having leaders?
You know, it's because sometimes you look at the experiences of the past. There is that fear that the moment you start having leaders or individuals who are seen as leaders of movement, that those leaders may subsequently be, be compromised or give up the vision of the
So
of
herein
the
lies
movement.
my concern here. Now, because we have seen examples of what young people do when given opportunity and all that. I'm not saying it's much more, incidence is much more on them, but the replacement generation we hope should be of higher quality. But when presented with this opportunity, they also fall into this trap. So what do we have to change? What do we have to do to stop that?
The question is, who are those presented with the opportunity? And let's talk about our political system and political culture. We have a political system that is driven by a politics of exclusion and a politics that is determined by money. And so you have a large percentage of young people who really want to get things done, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the name.
So because of this
the
faulty system throws up the wrong person.
So the faulty system that has been throwing up the wrong people in previous generations, if we retain it the way it is, we'll keep throwing up the wrong people even in the younger generation, because at the end, you see, there is the way wealth is secured in Nigeria. You have the 1% of the 1%, right? They have a smaller percentage of people who are the elite, who are at the upper class. The middle class, these days, we're not even sure if we still have middle class. Everyone is struggling in the middle class, you know, and then the lower class. So the question is, how many Nigerians, how many young Nigerians have the kinds of resources that political parties demand for to just contest at the primary level? How many young Nigerians have that kind of resources? How many young, competent Nigerians who made their wealth through hard work can actually compete with some of these money bags?
So that's the structure we have to dismantle.
That's the structure we need to dismantle. That's where we need to go to. And now there are opportunities. The last election gave us an inkling of what is possible with Nigeria's politics. And I say that not because...
That was a kind of a shift.
It was a shift from the norm. We saw people that that never thought they would win emerge because of a movement. And it showed us that the whole idea of the system is controlled by one or two persons can actually be challenged. And one way to achieve that is if you change voter turnout, if you increase turnout. Because if you look at the elections in Malawi, the recent elections in Malawi, if you look at Ghana, look at recent elections, look at South Africa. ANC had held South Africa from 1994, but ANC had to start a government or a government of coalitions. Why?
Survive, yeah.
Because he's losing his vote and his base. We saw what happened in Liberia. Why am I giving these examples? That when you have higher turnout, when you have turnout that is deliberate and intentional, you can change the face of leadership. And that is one way to counter the narrative of this system is controlled by those who have the money and the resources to hold it to themselves. And so for the next elections, this year there's an opportunity for electoral reform. I believe that Nigerians should take that advantage to make these demands for electoral reform. At least something as simple as compulsory electronic transmission of results should be made mandatory, and other reform processes. And then we start organizing ahead of the next elections, not just for the office of the president, because we need that overhaul. The president, the governor, the state assemblies, the national assemblies. You need the best of minds in the legislative houses, because if you don't have an independent and autonomous legislative house, you will not have the requisite powers to checkmate the executive. And so when you hear people saying things like, we need to change government, I think for me, it's not necessarily overly focused on one person as the president. It's a whole. It's about who are those representing us in National Assembly? How can we begin to hold them accountable? Who are those in the state assemblies? And then the local governments. Local governments' autonomy is key. But engaging that process is also important. And I think there's a lot of work for Nigerians, actually. It's going to be a tough period, but it takes the commitment of the people.
Tough work needed. It doesn't come easy. Radical changes, reformatory changes like this are not easy to come by. But one thing is, one concern I'm also seeing, because you talked about increasing participation, voter turnout. Most young people, I'm not going to vote. My votes will not count. So, and I always tell them, I do immediate education. they don't want you to be out there.
True.
They are sending the signal to discourage you from coming. They
True.
make you believe that your votes will not come out. That's the agenda, but you must destroy that thinking, and you mustn't allow it to come to fruition.
Yes.
You must come to vote. And that's where the hard work is needed now.
Yes.
Mobilization of young people.
Mobilization to come out to vote, and votes are counting. If votes were not counting, we would not have vote buying. And if you remember, Dr. Amechi, that 2003 and some years ago, monies to elections were given to one person to change results and all of those things. Vote buying was not a thing at that time. But subsequently, with reviews in the system and innovation to checkmate the system, we started seeing monies going to the voters. Why? Because politicians understood that these votes are going to count with things like accreditation of voters using technology and even the results process. And the reason why vote buying has increased is because they know that votes would count, but now the votes that are counting are the votes that are bought. And so for every Nigerian listening, when they tell you votes are not counted, it's just because they want to scare you, because the smaller you are in number, the easier to buy. When you come out in your numbers, how much money?
Other money.
Other manipulation. Yes, if you have lower turnout, we can easily, from 50, add 0 to 500 when we know we just had 50. Well, if you have 500, you cannot have another 0 because nobody is expecting 5,000 votes from a polling unit, you know. So these are the opportunities for us to assert our authority, our sovereignty as a people. And only a conscious people can change the system. Systems are built by people. It's not an
only
abstract
a
thing.
conscious. I want to underline
people,
that.
A conscious people. And I'm hoping that Nigerians understand the power of the moment. 65, imagine in the next 5 years, it'll be 70 years. Where do we want to be when we turn 70? And that is the bigger question for Nigerians. We may say we want to travel or Japan and all of that, but let's look at the trends globally. There is a shift in global politics. And with the rise of populism, with the rise of right-wing politics, the greater population at risk are supposedly the minority, Africans, the blacks, those that are not...
Immigration is now the major election issue in
immigration
societies.
is a major election issue, and there's going to be a major clampdown on immigrants. Anything that happens, immigrants will be blamed for that. And so there is no better time to build our home than now, because we want a country that works for our children so that our children will not have to be forced to live a strange life in a foreign land where they are treated like less humans.
Let's end with, you talked about Nigeria hitting 70. That will be in 5 years' time.
Yes.
Look into the future. What will you see at Nigeria 70? What kind of nation, country do you envisage?
Nigeria at 70, I'm praying, I'll use the word praying and hoping for a country where there is better national cohesion and social cohesion. Because I think that is one way to counter the abuse of the political class. If we are a united people and we are connected across our divisive lines, the dividing lines rather, we would be able to change the course of this nation. Nigeria at 70, I'm seeing and envisioning a country where the people are proud of their identity as Nigerians, and where we put our identity as Nigerians as paramount beyond any other identity. I think the third and last part is a Nigeria where the system is working for Nigerians, where the government places the demands of the people as a priority and the major interest line, and not their personal or political interest.
Quite optimistic.
Yes,
I
I'm
join in the
hopeful.
hope and prayer. Americans will say in God we trust. Some will
Amen.
say God is a Nigerian. But we have to do our hard work, and the buck rests on young people. Cynthia Mbamalu, Director of Programs, Siaga Africa, a lawyer, human rights and gender activist. Thank you so much for joining us today and offering your perspectives.
Thank you so much.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll hear from another young Nigerians. Do stay with us.
I have a message for you, you young people. You are the future and the greatest asset of this blessed country. You must continue to dream big, innovate, and conquer more territories in your various fields of science, technology, sport, and art and creative sector. Our administration, through policies and funding, we continue to give you wings to fly sky high. We created NEL Fund to support students with loans for their educational pursuits, approximately 510,000 students across 32 states of the Federation, including FCT, have benefited from this initiative, covering 228 higher institutions. As of September 10, the total loan disbursed was 99.5 billion, while the upkeep allowance stood as 44.7 billion. Credit Corp, another initiative of our administration, has granted over 153,000 Nigerians 30 billion affordable loans for vehicles, solar energy, home upgrades, digital devices, and more. Youth credit, which I promised last June, is a reality, with tens of thousands of NYSC members now active beneficiaries of consumer credit for resettlement. Under our Renew Hope agenda, we promise to build a Nigeria where every young person, regardless of background, has an equitable opportunity to access a better future. Thus, the investment in digital and creative enterprise, IDICE program, the bank.
Thank you so much for staying with us. From one young Nigerian to another, Ahmed Buhari is a politician. He ran for a vice presidential position not too long ago, and he belongs to the African Democratic Congress. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Cynthia Bamalu spoke about the need for young people to participate more in processes, governance, all phases of our national life. And she was of the conclusion that that is where the key lies, because in some other countries where you're seeing radical changes, they're being propelled by young people. Let's start with your perspective.
Cynthia and her group have been really doing well, almost 10 years on the same matter, trying to talk to young people to get involved. And I think young people are involved, actually, as a matter
They
of fact.
succeeded with not too young to run legislation, constitutional amendment, but that was the amendment. In reality,
It's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And it's because our people have been beaten down so deeply that financial resources determine largely every single thing that you want to talk about when it comes to politics.
so that's the next objective.
Yes, that's the next objective. And as at the time that I did contest in 2019, I remember we all pushed for the not too young to run, but I did make my decision to run for office of the president even before the not too young to run conversation kicked off in full gear. However, I think one of the biggest problems with the country right now is that the politicians have successfully weaponized poverty. And thinking about it, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago when we were in the streets trying to kick off the conversation for young people to be involved, at that time, people were still willing to listen. People wanted to hear your ideas and the possibilities of those ideas, affecting the kind of change that we want. People were interested in seeing young people who they believed had more energy run the conversation. But unfortunately, things kept getting worse. And so now people will tell you, no, I'm not going to do anything. I've not had any money in the last 3 months. So now that you have come and you want my support, you have to give me something. But for young people, especially young people who are living an honest life, most of the monies that you make are supposed to be monies that you will use to run your household and save for the rainy day. But now the system is compelling you to use those resources to woo the people. And so even if you give the people all you have, close to the election time, the politicians who have already gotten access to supposed funds that are supposed to be belonging to everybody will bring out those funds and woo the people in a bigger way. And the people will tell you, thank you for the borehole that you made for us last year. Well, this man just gave me 50,000 naira, my own.
One of the governorship candidates in the last Bayelsa election,
Yes.
I think the Labour Party's candidate said some voters that were enjoying currently then his scholarship collected 3,000 naira to vote against him. So it's survivor.
It's survival, 100%. So I commend Cynthia, I commend Yaga Africa, but I really think that we need a magical intervention from a leader who is going to help reorganize the way we think as a people. And so that leader is going to come on and make sure that politics and its campaigns are driven by hope.
Should it come from the resolve of a leader or pressures from the populace?
We can see that the pressure from the populace is unable to hold any water because the populace, as a matter of fact, like we will see the data, they're living below the poverty line. And so if people are living below the poverty line, there's nothing you're going to tell the brain that the stomach is going to understand.
So we have to wait for the Messiah.
So
it could be forever.
It could be forever, unfortunately. And the other option is to start thinking about, uprisings.
Not even uprising. It's even about the people asking questions.
So the people used to ask questions at the time when the poverty level wasn't this bad. They would ask, they would speak. Now you're speaking and people are like, don't say anything.
Questions of the stomach.
Don't say anything because they were just going to cut off all your licenses or they're going to cut off all your businesses or they're going to come with you with heavy taxes. And so people are really like, I cannot go against the conversation that the government is pushing forward because if I do go against it, I'm going to feel the brunt. And when you're feeling that brunt, nobody comes to you. You become a plague. The rest of the same people that are seeking the kind of help, or shall I say, revival that you were trying to push for, will be the same people that will run away from you the farthest. So it's a terrible situation. That is why I came up with the conversation of a Messiah, because as it is, Nigeria now, we have to turn to God. Unfortunately, it looks like that is the conversation that we're having now. Somebody who will come and say, you know what, for my Nigerian people, I do not want you to see this electoral process as a money process. We are going to give you what you need, and we're going to empower you people so that you can have a voice. Right now, Nigerians do not have a voice. Regardless of whatever the conversation is from any side of the divide, the truth of the matter is that the Nigerian people are just going to face wherever their stomachs will feel fuller.
Okay, you talked about the successes achieved with Not Too Young to Run, but young people finding it hard to break through because of money politics.
Absolutely.
Shouldn't we dismantle that system that says for political parties, big political parties, I don't know, when you aspire to run for the presidential campaign of the APC, that was in 2019.
Well,
how much was the nomination form and expression of interest?
At that time, it's 25 million naira.
Then.
But I didn't even run under the APC because I couldn't afford 25 million naira.
Okay.
I didn't run under the PDP because I couldn't afford about 18 million naira at that time. I think so. So we had to go and set up a party on our own called the Sustainable National Party. And then we spoke to our friends and families and said, you know what, let us do this thing. People came together, but
that's new political platform.
That was a new political platform, different.
One.
And the people that came, even on the day of our primaries, they wanted money for them to decide who amongst the presidential aspirants at that time that they were going to support. So it's
a deep-rooted problem.
It's a deep-rooted problem.
All about weaponization of poverty.
Absolutely, regardless of the political platform. So even when you look at it, even if you go to the African Democratic Congress now that is, trying to say, okay, fine, we're going to be the viable opposition to all of this conversation, every single thing that is going on around there with the state chairman, with the ones that are saying we are part and we are not part, everything lies around how much money are you ready and willing to give to them?
I was just reading a statement issued by Salihu Lukman,
yes,
a member of ADC,
yes,
lamenting the fact that the problems that plagued other parties are emerging in ADC, struggle over who controls party structure. So is it about new platform or the attitude of the people?
In the end, Oga, the leaders that we have, the political representatives that we have are from us. It's the same people. So there is something going on in the air that has gone on for so long that people are beginning to see as normal. In fact,
it has become a culture.
Absolutely. In fact, everything that I remember through the 80s and 90s that were right are now seemingly looking like wrong. And those that were wrong are now being accepted as right, unfortunately. So for me, it's hard for me to reconcile.
The exception has become the rule,
Yeah.
and the rule has become the exception.
Sadly. And so for me, it's hard for me to reconcile in my head because I was raised at a time when people had rules and regulations. There was morality, there was immorality, and it was distinct.
There were taboos.
There were taboos, you know, and now everything is just looking like it doesn't matter. If you have a baby mama or a baby daddy, it doesn't matter. After all, Davido has.
Celebrated.
It's been celebrated. I remember before, if that kind of situation befalls you, you are going to do whatever you have to do to remedy it in a way that society does not totally remove you from conversation. But now, it doesn't matter anymore. In fact,
You become the conversation.
you become the conversation, and then you celebrate yourself being talked about in that light. And so you keep looking at it. What are we really leaving for the generations coming? You know, how are we going to talk to our kids when friends of ours are being complicit in all of this mess that we are currently experiencing?
Sometimes I wonder what we are going to do to salvage the situation. In my home house, between me and my wife, we know what we do to tame the kids, but once they leave the confines
You
of
don't
the
know
house,
what next.
So the pressures. And I said, it's not all about what you do. It should be about what we should do as a society. But education and reorientation should be at the base of all this.
I agree, education and reorientation, and that is why when the president spoke yesterday about having just a certain number of secondary schools at independence, and now we have this much number of schools at 65 years, and in my head I'm thinking, is he putting into consideration the number of the population? Because he didn't mention the population that we were at in 1960, but he didn't mention the population.
Did he mention the number of out-of-school children?
He
about
didn't mention
20 million?
Absolutely. And then
And plans to get them off
and
the
then,
streets.
sir, the other problem is not in the quantity, it's in the quality. We're not talking about the kind of children we are bringing out of schools. We're not talking about how schools work with parents to cheat during exams so that the students can look good when they see their results. We're not talking about the fact that schools don't even talk about positioning anymore. And then you see everybody passed in the class.
Yes, there are no positions.
There are no
now.
positions. Everybody is doing well. And then even when you see your child with a low score in like 2 subjects, you go to the bottom remarks and they say, excellent result. I'm like, excellent result? That's not excellent. He didn't do well in mathematics. I want you to mention that he needs to put more effort in mathematics.
Yes.
Because
That's what we were seeing during our time.
Absolutely. Yes. So all of these things
identify your weak areas and suggest you work on them.
Yeah, so schools are afraid to speak the truth. Even schools are afraid to speak the truth because they fear you will pull your child to a school that is going to pamper your child and give them a pat on the back. Because parents want to also feel proud. So on the day of the president's speech giving day, every child in the class gets one award or the other.
Most improved.
Most improved.
And when they have a way of making sure that it goes down. Because I say, well, what's the meaning of this most improved?
Sir,
they always find something. But the thing is that we really need to look at the problem subterraneously. Even schools, if you talk to Jamba and Wayek, they will tell you the drivers of examination malpractices are parents and schools.
Oh, yes. So, 20 years ago, you will find very, very few teachers, corrupt teachers, who were liaising with parents to get those what they call, I can't remember what they used to call those question papers before they come out before exams.
To leak them.
To leak them. Now, it's everybody.
It's a whole school system.
It's a whole school system.
That will design exam.
Parents are being told to bring extra money so that all of those processes can be put together in such a way that there shouldn't be a problem, including the invigilator, the external invigilator that's going to come. This is how we're going to settle him. Oga, there's a big problem. There's a big problem. And why I'm talking about all of this around the educational system is because that is the only place that we can set it right. So that when people come out of that system, they can say to the rest of the world, that is right and this is wrong.
It's indeed a big problem because we are like a train moving at top speed.
Yes.
Bullet train, maybe 1,000 kilometers per hour.
In the wrong direction.
Heading to, not just a wrong direction, heading towards a rock. That's because if we continue, the basics of our society decaying so fast. Where will it lead us?
All we'll be talking about will be like complain and complain. Okay, so for example, what's the solution? Okay, we're hearing that we have over 1,000 schools now, secondary schools, for example, and I'm saying
about is this a 156,000 or so?
Yeah, that's a huge number. Kind of impressive when you see it, but what is the quality coming out of those schools? How about we start asking, oh, you want a license to open a school? Oh, you want to have a license? There's a government policy. It's just the way Governor Soludo came up in the 2000s and says, you know what, we're going to rebase all of these banks. We're going to start with 25. Recapitalize these banks and see how we can have more sustainable banks. And even banks that bank MDs and chairmen that didn't want to sit in the same room had to sit in the same room, because even those that had 20 billion and the ones that had 2 billion were in the same boat because they were all going to crash all of you. So they started consolidating and they sat down together, and then, 20 billion, 2 billion, 1 billion, and came together. Even the ones that had big names that didn't want to squash their names, they probably changed their colors, because these other guys will come in with a green color. I had a red color. I'm going to keep my name, for example, but I needed to have the collection of the rest of the banks that were coming to join me. I think that should be done with the educational system. I think a policy must be put in place so that we would understand that as much as we want to see as many schools as possible with experts trying to run these schools, let us have some sort of consolidation that will make sure that we're not just having schools, but we're having real schools that can give real quality.
For me, it's about government spending public funds on education. While I was in secondary school, there was no private school.
There were very few.
Maybe one or two. Today, there are more. In Abuja, for instance, there are more private school desks in terms of number than public schools. So government is running away from its responsibility. And as we end now, looking ahead, we have identified what our problems are. We have also proposed solutions. But how, within the next 5 years, can we surmount these problems? Because we make reference to Indonesia, Malaysia, we were better than them in the 60s, but
Dubai,
within a space of 5-10 years, there was a shoot, a leap.
Yeah.
Can we have that leap in the next 5 years?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to go back to the scriptural path. We need a Messiah. We need a real leader who is going to say, you know what, I'm going to fix this educational system. I'm going to fix this legal system, even if it's going to affect me. We need a legal system that is going to be honest, so that people who falter do not find a place to hide.
Paul Kagame in Rwanda?
Paul Kagame in Rwanda, of course, there's a constitution that binds Rwanda that I think is working for Rwanda, because I wouldn't lie to you, I've been to Rwanda a couple of times, and I feel very proud when I step into Rwanda.
All down to him, his leadership.
His leadership, yes. A leader must be stern, yet compassionate, yet available, yet ready to listen. And if we do not have all of that kind of leader, we're going to be in trouble. So, for example, now, I listened to the president's speech yesterday, and I think most of what he said were things that his aides and his ministers and everybody around him has said, this is what we have done, and this is how well we're going. I think, unfortunately, the president is not young enough to do the kind of things that I want him to do, but he needs to be on the ground to really see that the people that he thinks, like he said in his speech, are more prosperous now, are indeed in poverty.
So alternative channels of communication?
Absolutely must be created.
Different from the official one?
He needs to create a new line and say, you know what, you guys, you don't have any boundary. Just come to me directly. Let me know what is going on. Because I know he does not have the strength to be on the streets. And that is why when we look at the military and all of the years we think we were stagnant, they were able to achieve more than what we are seeing with the politicians today, because primarily they were younger, they were agile, they were strong, they were quick to make decisions because they were on the ground.
Well, let's see how it pans out. But in the next 5 years, you see a lot of positivity, right?
I don't know.
Or you want to be cautiously optimistic?
I want to be optimistic every time. I want to be hopeful. And the best part of that speech was the hope that he's tried to sell, because leaders must also try to sell hope. But unfortunately, the reality is far from most of the things that the president did itemize as part of his successes.
So if I understand the presidency very well, it's just like anybody in position of authority. You ask the president to have grant access to young people, he'll be distracted. It boils down to a president. A lot of people come in, his phone buzzing and all that. Some people, you send WhatsApp messages, it takes 48 hours before they get around to read it and all that because of the deluge.
Even people that are not even presidents.
Yeah, ordinary folks.
Yeah, even ordinary folks.
So you need to protect the president.
Yeah.
But in protecting the president, those around the president should be those that share in his ideals, those that are patriotic and are working for the country, not for their pockets.
I think people are sitting too pretty these days. I remember before, 15, 30 years ago in this country, nobody was too certain that their positions were grounded. You could be removed anytime, you could be substituted. There are millions of Nigerians that can do what you're doing and do it even better. So people were on their toes. Now people just sit pretty. I'm going to be a minister for 8 years. I just want him to win the second term.
It started with Buhari administration.
It started with, exactly, unfortunately. But even before then, a lot of people started feeling comfortable in their spaces because there were no checks and balances. We do not have appraisal mechanisms that determine whether or not some ministries or some agencies are doing well enough. And then there's so much manipulation in the presentation of the data that we try to want to use to relate with the realities. And so a lot has been lost in all of these conversations. And I'm just hoping that I'm not asking him to interface with young people. That's not what we're asking. We're just saying, can we try and be more realistic? So, for example, fuel subsidy is being talked about like one of the gains of this administration, but I don't know.
That's the removal. The
removal of subsidy, fuel subsidy, but I do not see it as a gain because indeed what happened was there were a couple of marketers who used to swindle the country, and now we've said, you know what, we're not going to let you guys swindle the country again. Let's get a new group of people that are going to swindle the country, because if indeed the president is giving all of those monies to the state governors, then we should be better than what we are today.
And those money, lots of money going to state government. If you look at the dollar equivalent, you see that it's even less.
Well, so that means we're doing something's wrong with the policy that is not making the dollar appreciate.
Yes, the other time there were celebrations about federation accounts allocation from the federation accounts hitting 2 trillion. But when you do the mathematics of dollar equivalent and take it back to 4 years, you see there's a decrease.
Oh, yes. And it's happening because we are still doing the wrong things. For example, I'll give you a good example. We buy nearly everything in this country. We import nearly everything. And everybody who does the importation, whether you're importing vehicles or you're importing services, you go and you buy with your dollar. You source for your dollar yourself. But in the case of our major commodity, which of course is petroleum, we are still saying to everybody that, look, you know what? We are going to look for the dollar and support the system to bring it. So the government has no business trying to help marketers source for the dollar. Let everybody who wants to bring a commodity into the country do it themselves. And as a matter of fact...
That was why CBN came up with the 44 items that were banned from having access to official foreign exchange market.
Are they still having...
Under MFL, but it's been removed now.
Exactly. So, and then because of all of this back and forth, we're not able to have a system that is stable. And this lack of stability not just makes our economy shaky, but even it discourages foreign investors from believing that we know what we're trying to do, unfortunately.
Okay. I think we have to leave it here. We have to thank you so much, Abe Buhari, politician. Hoping for...
I want to always say that I'm a geologist. and
that's your first business address.
And then politics should be community service. Anybody who does not have a
should be second address.
Absolutely. Anybody who does not have a day job and tells you that I'm a career politician, check him out. Probably a scammer.
Okay, good to know you're a geologist. There are many technocrats in politics, and geologists are one of them. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you also for being part of it. My name is Amechi Anapue. Have a good time.